very special. Welcome to our live. Thanks to Brother Lofty for the coordination. I had a chat with Lofty earlier on May 29, 2024, about a program that he had planned for tonight and one that I planned for tonight as well. And Lofty, being the true trooper, statesman that he is, suggested that we cannot collaborate. And I agreed, because I had advertised my program for 8 and his was starting at 6. He said, my brother, mine may go on for a bit longer, so it doesn't make sense that we cross each other. Let's work it out. And that's the beauty of Loftus. That's why I love this gentleman so much. He understands that we are all in the business and it's better if we coordinate things. So Lofty, take a bow, my dear brother and friend. You're an amazing man. You understand the concept of real unity, of strategizing for progress and success. And I salute you as a hero, as a messenger, as an activist, and probably a politician. I think you have all the acumen to become somebody great in Dominica's politics. You're already great in the civic life, but you can do great things. So I salute you again for reaching out and for us coming to this understanding whereby I listen to your program and now your viewers can have an opportunity to listen and view mine as well, because we are dealing with the same issue, just slightly from a different perspective. I was happy to see the comrades, go at it. There was a little bit of the practical nuance and a lot of the politics in the person of Bernardito, who is the leader of the Freedom Party, and one would expect him to take on the posture that he took on your program. And Magel and Evans, of course, did what they had to do. They were operatives. They were there. They eyeballed the situations, and no one could tell them what they saw. I was very impressed with the conversation about the firearm and the effect of being wounded by particular caliber firearms. And that ties into some findings that I've made about the research of the killing of Philip Timothy as well, which I will maybe mention in this program. And of course, Bernardito from the Freedom Party seemed to have played the role of the status quo, Freedom Party status quo, which is politically expected of him. So I wanted to commend you, Lofty, and your guests for doing what they did tonight. And I welcome your viewers, those persons who patronize in your program, to our little platform tonight as we continue the discussion, not so much so in terms of the practical nature of what really happened on May 29, 1979, but we are looking at it in a very different light. We're looking at May 29, 1979, 2 generations after, with the view to seeing whether we have moved on, and if not, how we're going to move on from this. Based on what I saw tonight on Lofty's program, we have not moved on. We have not moved an inch. In fact, we are closer to it than we should be moving away from it. And the closing discussion on the program confirms that. The fear that the gentlemen express of having some upheaval or turmoil in Dominica confirms that we have not moved on. And my question to us tonight is how we do it. So I'm going to bring in a little bit of my research, a lot of my research. As you know, I've been working on a couple projects, certainly the leaders of our country. For quite some time, I interviewed Patrick John and would have researched him for over 20 years while he was alive, and have information that he shared with me that no one else has. And some people may say, well, why do we want to hear about Patrick? We know everything. We know everything about Patrick already. The question is, why not hear from him? And the second book in the series of books I'm doing on the leaders of Dominica is on Patrick John. And a lot of what he has said to me will be printed in the book in terms of direct quotes, and of course my own analysis and rebuttals and whatever else. But Patrick's story has to be told. His side must be part of the history of our country. His story must form part of Dominica's history. So I'll make some reference to the work that I'm doing on the book, the second book in the series of leaders. I have one book that I've published already. And remember, we're doing 6 books, looking at all the leaders of our country between E.O. LeBlanc and Roosevelt's Garrett. We did Dame Eugenia, which is all available now on Amazon, and we are doing Patrick John next. Maybe Patrick John might be next year. It depends. We'll see how it works. But this book is doing well still. We might give it some airtime still before we drop Patrick John. So I just felt that on the anniversary of the May 29, 1979 issue, I would ask the question, have we moved on? And if not, how are we going to progress from this political chapter? So that's what my emphasis is about this evening. I'm happy that you're here. I will go ahead and do a presentation and then hopefully have some interaction with you if you so desire. So you could pose your questions. As long as they are in line with my focus, I'll be more than very happy to deal with the questions. I certainly will not be doing any partisan slants to the discussion. I have not been. I've tried my best to stay away from it, although I've become a bit more partisan than I was in the past. But even being a partisan person or being politically exposed, I still try to present information that is without political bias as much as possible. Although no, you cannot be free from all biases, but I try myself to shed the biases and present the information to individuals in a way that you would accept it. So that's my intention tonight, looking at the issues of May 29, 1979, 45 years after, and I'm asking the question, have we moved on? If we have not, how are we going to start a new political chapter? So that's it. Let's get into the discussion. Tonight, I hope you really are here to enjoy it and to push back if you need to push back. And this discussion is part of my ongoing series of programs called Politics and Power, which is a public discourse that I decide to do as a professional educator. It's part of my remit to give back to my community. And I at least try to do this once a week. I didn't do it on Monday because I knew we were going to have the anniversary of the May issue. So I waited until today to do it. And that's why I'm doing my Politics and Power feature on the anniversary of the May 29, 1979 fiasco. Not a revolution, as some people call it, because a revolution is a complete change of a system. That didn't happen in Dominica. We had a popular uprising, upheaval. In terms of revolution, Haiti is the only country in the Caribbean, and maybe in the that really had a real revolution where they freed the country and freed the slaves, freed the people. America had a revolutionary war where they freed the country from colonialism and kept slavery. So that was not a full revolution. It was a revolutionary war. And Dominica certainly didn't have a revolution. We changed the government by popular revolt, but a lot of these things remained the same. In fact, the status quo was reversed. And I will speak about that a bit later on. And for those of you who are joining, if you're not from Dominica and you have no knowledge of Dominica, this issue is an issue relating to Dominica's politics, but it has wider implications as my presentation tonight will reveal. So let me pull up my PowerPoint and discuss from the PowerPoint. And after that, probably we'll do some random pictures of May 29, 1979, and hopefully take your questions. So I believe that the issue of May 29, 1979 has left an indelible mark on the history of Dominica. And I didn't say political history, I said the history, because politics is part of what Dominica is. And the issues of May 29, 1979 was not just political. It was, well, and when I said not just political, I mean partisan or electoral, because everything is political. This was an historic event that really changed the landscape of Dominica, or has changed the landscape of Dominica for the better part of a half a century. And I believe that things have not moved on much since that, as far as the politics is concerned. So May 29, 1979 has left an indelible mark on the history of Dominica. And I will deal with the topic in different phases so that we understand in a way that we can refer to for reference. Again, that's how I like to present information, in a way that students or ordinary people, non-students, grown-ups, whoever, could come back to what it is that I present for facts or for guidance or for support in terms of writing an essay or a paper tomorrow. So I like to present information in a way that promotes research, so to speak. So again, back to my PowerPoint as I do this presentation from my PowerPoint. The question is, when did 1979 begin? And that is a crazy question. 1979 began on January 1st, 1979. No. I believe 79 began before. Some people said 79 began in 1971. Some said 1978 with independence. Some said 1977 with the 47-day strike. Different takes on the beginning of 1979. But I believe that 1979 was birthed in the political struggle of Dominica going way back. But I do not really want to go back to colonialism. Let us start in 1955 when the Freedom Party, not the Freedom Party, when the Labour Party was introduced to the politics of Dominica. 3 years before universal adult suffrage, when we had the ministerial system and we started the voting system for representation in Dominica. The Labour Party was established as a grassroots party for the ordinary man, to promote a different kind of levity, a different kind of political ethos away from the colonial control, the systematic governance of the country. So when Labour Party came on the scene, it kind of unset the status quo, and that brought about a different energy. And there are a number of players who were part of the Freedom Party, of the Labour Party initiation. It was created, of course, by the founders of the movement, Ms. James and Isilo Black. We're not going to get into the history. But instantly, the Labour Party signaled a different direction for Dominica. And E.O. Leblanc was one of the major leaders who helped to give definition and direction to the ideals of the Labour Party. So the E.O. Leblanc factor was very significant when it came to the work of Labour. Edward Oliver Leblanc was a gentleman from Vacaz who was first premier of Dominica. He was called premier because Dominica had not yet been an independent country, and he had been governing the affairs of the country, of course, albeit under the British control. So when he became premier of Dominica, he decided to steer Dominica in a different direction, away from the colonial vintages. So he found himself in hot water from day one, because the system that had controlled Dominica for so long, the people who are now the benefactors of that control are seeing a different kind of attitude towards government being proposed by Leblanc, and they started resenting Leblanc's lead and Labour Party's ideal from day one. And Leblanc left because of that. And there was a race for leadership of the Labour Party. And it was believed that the Labour Party's leadership should go in a different kind of hand. Not what Leblanc promoted, but somebody who identified the status quo, the bourgeoisie, the plantocracy, the merchant class. And a number of names were touted as people who could have been people who were dependents of the bourgeoisie, people who were children of the great capitalists of our era, of that era. And lo and behold, they did not emerge as leaders. Patrick John emerged as leader, popularly. And Patrick John was the catalyst in chief For the agitators on the other side, those who represent the system, the status quo, not the colonials, but those who benefited from that, those who wanted things to remain as was, not ruffling the feathers too much. So Patrick became the catalyst in chief because obviously he is going to continue what Leblanc would have started. And Leblanc did a couple of things that he felt necessary at the time, including a shut your mouth bill that he wanted to pass to kind of rein in the people who were writing against government, hurting government in his view. And he felt it best to present a law that would force people to declare who they were, because people were writing damaging things against the government and they were not signing their names. They were using pseudonyms. And he wanted people to declare. And the Constitution kind of protected that as well. So it was an unpopular law that Patrick John actually inherited. So the hate for Leblanc continued through, well, not the opposition of Leblanc continued through Patrick John, and Patrick John became agitator, became catalyst in chief of the issues, mainly because Patrick was braggadocious. Patrick was cavalierish. He was carefree. He did not operate in a way that really spoke to decorum. He did not vet and check certain things, and he made a lot of blunders. Patrick also tried to initiate some new laws that were vexing, and he had an AG who was not advising him correctly. So Patrick made a lot of political errors, but Patrick Roland John was not corrupt. His regime was not corrupt. He never took a penny. In fact, he gave everything he had, as Desiree John, she will tell you. And my brother Simeon Joseph, my countryman, my blood, he also is a researcher. He had been very close to Patrick. He was a labor man, a real labor man, and he understands Patrick's politics. So Patrick was never corrupt. So contrary to the unpopular or popular notion that the Labour Party under Patrick John was corrupt and that's why he was kicked out of office, that is a categorical untruth. Yes, Patrick was careless, but not corrupt. And I will speak to his carelessness in the book a bit more, and I may mention a few things tonight. I'm not here to defend Patrick. I'm here to speak about where we are today. And where we are today is part and parcel, is part and parcel of the Patrick and Leblanc legacy and leadership. So I have to speak about those because children want to know the truth from a kind of a neutral perspective. Even if I'm seen as politically assigned or aligned, I am an educator as well. So it's my duty and my responsibility to present information to anybody who belongs to any party in a way that they can at least say and reference the information. So I spoke about the Leblanc factor, and I said Patrick was the catalyst in chief for the things that eventually happened in 1979. The prevailing climate in the day, in terms of what was happening, not just in Dominica, in the world, called for revolution and political change. It was not just a Dominica song, it was a global reality. And the people who were opposing Patrick John and the Labour Party, which was in government at the time and could not lose to Freedom. There's no way Freedom Party was going to defeat Labour Party in Patrick John days just like that. So there had to have been new antics. And one of the things that they did was to globalize the local issues for effectiveness and impact, because there were a number of global issues taking place. And people were saying, well, you see, if we keep Patrick in power, he's going to be like that. Here's what he's doing. And they kind of highlight his errors and his wrongs and use a lot of innuendos to aggrandize his errors and get people to be scared. One of the biggest things that they did was to say that Patrick John sold half of Dominica, the northeast of Dominica. That wasn't true. Patrick John created a business arrangement with Don Pearson. I think at the time, I hope I have my Don Pearson correct. Yes. For the promotion of a duty-free zone like St. Martin had, Patrick said exactly that's what he wanted to do, to create an opportunity for there to be new commerce and business. Never did he sell or did he plan to sell anybody's land. Because Patrick told me once, but Alex, if I sold the land, everybody still have the certificate of title. Nobody had to go and reclaim it. It's there. That was never the case. It was a business deal that was caught to be able to allow for a duty-free development in the northeast of Dominica, similar to what is being done now with the developments. Maybe not similar, maybe Patrick's plan was better, but that was the plan. And the people who were opposing him decided to globalize the issue and say that man is a danger. And they call him corrupt and all sorts of names. But as I said before, he wasn't corrupt. He was careless, braggadocious, radical, probably silly, probably ill-advised, never corrupt. So the globalization of Dominica's issue created attention on Dominica, to the point where the mighty Sparrow, Calypso king of the world, sang a song, the year of the tyrant's decline, the year 1979. From Nicaragua to Uganda is bombs, and so he was capturing the revolutionary acumen of the world in song at the time. And our leader Patrick John was given a line or two in that song when he said, Patrick John is a wanted man. The Shah of Iran is a wanted man, you know, and he kind of connected the issues in Dominica with global issues, because we had a revolution in Iran that same year when the people of Iran changed their government popularly and changed the trajectory of Iran in the world politics. We won't get into that tonight, but this was the prevailing climate that was connected to what was happening in Dominica. So the people who were opposing Patrick John knew very well to tag our problems to a regional and international issue and show how damaging Patrick John was going to be to Dominica. We also had this issue of the Idi Amin matter. Idi Amin was a very popular leader from Uganda who won popularly but became incensed and infused with power to the point where he started making some fundamental blunders. He became too much into his head. And there was a major uprising which took him out of government in 1979. And also in the 70s, we had the bounce back from the civil rights era. Rights were being demanded. People will say, never again do we go back to those oppressive sorts of stuff. And the conservative political ideology started to take root. And the Freedom Party in Dominica was what? A conservative party with Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. They were the same ilk. Dame Eugenia was a devout conservative. So obviously, she was being advised and assisted by people who told me that they were sent to America by the conservative movement to learn the tricks of winning elections. And the conservative principle guided a lot of the things that the Freedom Party did in Dominica to dislodge the Labour Party. So the Labour Party was not a corrupt party in the 70s. It was led by a guy who was careless and who made mistakes. But nothing about corruption could be tagged on the Labour Party under Patrick John or Edward Oliver LeBlanc. So the conservative sort of ideals help to unseat the Labour Party, to turn popular support into anger. And after Patrick took us to election, 6-7 months after, he was out of government. That is the antics of conservative electioneering. And if you look at any conservative leader in that era, and even now, conservatives do not win naturally. They always find different things to use, law and order, strategies, stuff which are unorthodox. Yes, they win, but it is not a clear, straight win as Patrick and a popular sort of social democratic party would. And I hear people defend freedom. I'm not a defender or criticize. I don't know do I criticize. I'm just discussing the issues that led to the demise of the Patrick John-led government of Dominica at the time. And I'm suggesting things that might have helped the movement against the government to grandstand and to cause people like my grandmother, who was the biggest labor right, to turn against Patrick John, who she thought was a god. And in less than no time, she changed because the message on the other side was so strong. And this is the genesis of the starting of the May 29, 1979 issue. It did not start in that year. It started with the formation of a different kind of a movement to create opportunities for people who never had opportunities before. And again, I think I heard a politician tonight saying that the politics of the 60s was the politics of handout and personalities, and no. The politics of what we have inherited now is that. Because Mamo in her time was not a handout person. Yes, the Freedom Party did things for people who supported them. But Mamo did not wholly believe in handouts. Nor did Patrick John. Nor did LeBlanc. So, Mr. Politician who mentioned the politics of the 60s as being that of personality driven and favor granting, no. Every political era has that. But the 60s was not marred by that kind of politics. And not even the 70s, but certainly the 80s to an extent, and absolutely the past 2 decades is embroiled in that. Mama was not fully a handout person. She took care of the people she had to take care of. And any politician will do that. Mama was not a saint. But she was not a person who was big on that kind of mendicant behavior. Socialists somehow do that. Capitalists don't. It's part of the political ideology where conservatives don't think that they should give people handouts like that. They think people should earn their keeps. And that's what Mamo was. And Patrick was somebody who believed that the government should create possibilities for the people to gain things. That is how the ideology was. The handout mendicant system started with the current regime. I mean, yeah, you can say the Workers' Party had the little, LPOs. Every party does that. But the problem of mendicancy began with this present regime. So, Mr. Politician who said that the politics of the 60s was revisited, I think you got that wrong. And I would hope that you would clear that out the next time you're speaking on political issues of our country. So that is the genesis of the beginning of the issues of May 29, 1979. So I talk about the birth of the labor, LeBlanc, Patrick, the prevalent issue in terms of the climate, globalization, the conservative movement, the different kind of issues which happened in 1979. And attention is now drawn on Patrick John and Dominica. Songs are being written and people are saying, what? That's happening there now? So let's continue with my discussion. So this other slide will also give you some clues of a couple of things that were happening. Vietnam. I talk about the civil rights and the oppression. Coming out of the 60s, the Cold War, which is still happening, Roe v. Wade in terms of the Abortion Act in the 1970s, 1973. Margaret Thatcher had become the first female Prime Minister of England. Again, I'm showing you activities taking place around us in the Americas and in the world that is affecting Dominica. Cadas music was also born during that time. And Cadas music is Dominica's revolutionary music. Dominica's version of Calypso, Cadas Lipso. So all of this was happening and people were waking up. The young men and women of Dominica were heading to the hills to create their own society. Things were not happening and the fervor, the energy was high. And the people who wanted to replace the government fed on all those energies of that revolutionary decade. Guys, I hope you're getting the sequence. And I'll get into the point. It might sound a bit teachy, it's not. I just want to make sure that those of us who are interested in the chronological order of the development of the politics of our country can rely on certain bits of information to make the case. And that's what I'm doing tonight. So let's go to the next slide to show us how this thing continues in terms of the ideology. So there was a transition in Dominica, political one, and it came with implications because we transitioned from a social liberal democracy to a fiscal conservative government. And again, I heard a politician speaking tonight about policy. That is true. That is what a fiscally responsible party does. And the conservatives are very famous for that. So we move away from the idea of we have a democracy, but we must take care of the people's social need in a way that is free from the control of the special interest groups. We moved away from a people-driven agenda to a sort of incentives to corporations. Again, the people who are in power, who are part of the, not elitist group, not the plantocracy, are going to give support to the people who are in business and in corporations. So we move away from what Patrick and Libla had been doing to know what the Freedom Party is promoting. Again, no criticism of the Freedom Party, just an explanation of the shift. And the slide again will show you that we move away from a situation where we broke down social barriers when Libla made it possible for people who look like me to work in the banks in Roseau. Before that, you could not see non-mulatto working in those areas. But those borders were broken down. So we move from that to a renewed social order. Again, not a criticism, just a reality of the Freedom Party under its conservative veil. The idea of the grassroots struggle of the people was replaced with a global democratic political agenda and trend. So it's not a localized thing. No, we are part of a global order, and that's how Dominica should be. Equal rights was replaced with militarization, power, and wealth. And no one is going to tell me that the Freedom Party under the Eugenia did not militarize the police. Yes, Patrick had police. He had defense force. Again, maybe a little confused authority. But what did Mamo do when she came in? She disbanded the defense force and militarized the police. And conservatives always use law and order, militarization, power, inequalities, and wealth to control. So I'm just showing you the difference from what we moved from and to. And you will, at the end of the day, tell me what benefited Dominica better or what would have benefited Dominica better. Political transition and the implications. I won't get into all the implications. I'm trying to make the argument that 79 began because of a number of different things. And I'm asking the question, where we are. Have we moved? If we have not moved, how are we going to move? So I'll move to the next slide. To speak about that shift to political independence. So we had political independence under Patrick John, 1978. There were a lot of discussions about it. I won't get into all of the discussions and referendum and what Patrick John did. That's going to come out in my book. And how he called Eugenia's bluff. I will explain all of that. Tonight is not the time for that. But when we had independence, right after independence, we had a power shift. So I showed you a nice little picture of our former prime ministers, now both deceased, Patrick John to the left and D.B. Eugene on the right, being sworn in office. So independence came with Labour and Patrick, but instantly we had a power shift. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm developing a narrative to explain 1979, not from a partisan point of view. I'm not defending any party. I'm just offering a discussion. Hopefully, it means something to somebody as we try to unblock the pipe of our politics so that we could have better political progress moving forward. So on the next slide, the narrative continues. Freedom Party enjoyed the reign of office in Dominica. And there was a gentleman by the name of Edison James who was a Freedomite for some time, and other people in his ilk and his age group would have been. And of course, he may tell you he was a Labourite. But we move from crisis to recovery to crisis, because there was a time when he was heading the Banana Initiative, which brought lots of people, which made a lot of people very wealthy, thanks to Mr. James, a trained agronomist from the community of Marigot, who represented well a fantastic statesman, impeccable valor, fantastic orator, just a gentle gentleman to know. So he did his bit, and he came out with and his friends, Canet, Julius, Norris, Ron, for a new entity called the UWP, which seized the power from freedom because they moved back to the ideals of the people's worth in the society, the people earning for themselves and determining their own destiny. So we move from crisis to recovery, back to crisis, because that party was short-lived in power. They were unceremoniously, as my next slide will show you, replaced by a governing coalition. Remember, guys, we start with colonialism, then we had universal adult suffrage, we had the ministerial system, we had the Labour Party coming in just before that to challenge the status quo. The DUPP was wrong, they could not muster the Labour Party. Freedom Party was formed right after in 1968, and they could not muster the Labour. Labour won 3 or 4 elections in a row and would win many more had it not been for the machinations, which did not start in 1979, which started when Labour Party was formed, and all the agitation throughout the years, especially beginning in the 1970s, early 1970s. So it took at least maybe 10 years steady of constant, organized, strategized agitation to see the fall of the government of Dominica. Not disorganized as we are doing now and disunited and everybody believing that they are the star of their own domain. This was a well-orchestrated plan with an agitator-in-chief, Mr. Charles Savre, former president of Dominica, my dear friend. I'm not libeling him, I'm saying what it is, that the role that he played in our politics. And he may tell you that it was a just cause because the government was doing crazy things. Yes. But a lot of the things that was said about the government at the time was exaggerated. Even when Mr. Savre asked for an increase of 100% or 80% or 70%, he got 300% increase, and he still was not satisfied. Again, that is statements I will make in a book coming out sometime shortly. So a lot of the strike action and all of that, guys, it was not just about one law that Leblanc or Patrick wanted to pass. It was about changing the political status quo from the hands of the ordinary people into the hands of the people who should have it. And that is what 1979 was about. Nothing about corruption or bad law. Yes, that was part of the mix. But the ethos, the underlying issues, the underpinnings of the problem was the power shift. So the next slide will speak to that. And I'm getting to the end of my discussion, guys. I never take a very long time to discuss the issues, and I'm hoping that there will be some questions from you that I can answer later on. But I do not really delay about presenting the information. So we saw the creation of the UWP, which unseated the Freedom Party and vexed Dame Eugenia to the point where she, a capitalist, decided to work with a communist. Ladies and gentlemen, you guys don't understand this thing to the extent that probably Eugenia did, She was a capitalist of the highest pedigree. And she was willing to work with a social communist, Rosie Douglas. But they call him a communist. And probably he was. He certainly was a socialist. And she decided to create an arrangement to share power, to shift power away from, again, the ordinary people, the UWP. And she was successful because they barely scraped. And later on, more people moved from the UWP into the new power sharing arrangement. And now I think with the machination of this guy on the screen, oh boy, he has taken it to an all new level. But let us not be misguided that what we have today in government was inherited from that coalition of 1999-2000. It is a continuation. There is no Labour Party in office today. Labour Party lost power in 1979 and had not yet been returned to power. Yes, people claim the name of Labour and the colour and the symbol. But those people who are true Labour and who understand Labour, guys, is that really Labour? No. None of the Labour ideals is being practiced by Labour. It is the ideals of a group of people who are sharing power. Conservative people, Charles Savrin as he was, this prime minister is a conservative, but they all conveniently become grassroots because they want the power. That grand shift took place 20 how many years ago, and it is still in place. It is not the same as Eugenia envisaged because she's now probably rolling in a grave. But she is the one who put this in place, and it continues today with this mastermind who is able to hold on to that power, and I suspect may hold on to it for as long as he wants, until the people decide probably to stop him. Or until we who oppose him find a way to strategize in a united front to replace him. And he can be replaced. It has to be strategic and organized. No one group or party in Dominica right now will be able to unseat this regime that is planted for the past almost quarter century and save the 4.5 years of the UWP. Goes back, right back to the controlling group. So it's not an easy fix. The status quo that was created by Ruzi, a leftist, and Mamo, a rightist. Guys, I understand the politics, you understand it, and I know you know what I'm saying is true. They could not come from, I mean, they were both bourgeois, because Ruzi's father was a capitalist, and Eugenia's father too was a capitalist, JB and RBD. But Ruzi did not jive with his father, and his father did not jive with him. In fact, Ruzi's father told us that we should not vote for Ruzi. Ruzi is a communist because Ruzi didn't like the capitalist control that his father was having. And even if it was his father, he had a different political ideology. So although they were both bourgeois, Ruzi did not buy into the capitalist mentality. You see what I'm saying, guys? Ruzi went to a different order, and that put him at odds with Eugenia, who maintained the capitalist slant, the conservative slant of things. So although they were both from the plantocracy, they were both bourgeois, but Ruzi opposed the bourgeoisie. Dame Eugenia embraced it. Again, that is just putting things as is, but that was the ideal of the conservative movement. It is still the ideal of the conservative movement. We don't have a clearly defined political ideology in Dominica right now, so we do not know too much of it. But look at America and see what is happening now with the Conservative Party. That's exactly how Eugenia's Conservative Party was. In fact, most of her operators learned the trade from America, including the power acquisition. So I spoke about the political coalition which took place in 2000. And I'm asking the question, what has happened since? Nothing. It is still in place. We had two prime ministers dying in office, Pierrot and Ruzi, both of who were not labor rights. They were socialists, DLM. So Labour has not really won an election in Dominica since 1975. And that is the facts. Yes, the Labour Party in name has been winning, but not as a party, as a group of people who have taken over the party. So what has happened since? The same old continues. Since 1979, and the Labour was taken off, and of course, Freedom was there for 15 years representing that other group. And they were taken out by the UWP, which was a group that represented the lower, smaller group. It had remained the same. So for the past 50 years, only 4.5 years, well, let's say 5 years, we had rule by the people, for the people, in the way that it was envisioned by the party of the people, the Labour Party. And I'm hoping I'm making the point. I know you're getting it. And if you don't get it, ask me. I'll answer after my presentation. That's what has happened since. Nothing else has happened since. Is the accommodation that was done in 2000 over? But somebody can answer that. How can it be over? When was it over? When? No, it's still going. Its fact is stronger than ever before. No new dispensation started. It just continued. When we had two prime ministers dying in office within the space of 3 years, and this wonderful, handsome young man emerged and became our leader. And for over 20 years now, he's the prime minister. He continues from the valor of the people who were before him, who got power because of Eugenia and the conservative movement. He was a young YFM. He's a conservative. Well, a kind of confused conservative who is, he has this populist grandeur about him. So he's not a leftist guy. He's not a liberal, social kind of a liberalist. No. He's a populist conservative who believe in ruling by decree. And that is, but he's using the liberal brand so he can continue controlling the power. And I've said so over and over again. Again, the gentleman should be smiling now because I'm characterizing his rule. I don't think he's a dictator. No, he's just enjoying measured, good food, easy pickings for him. Again, because we had not yet sat down and analyzed and strategized to put together a team and a play to unseat him. And God forbid it's going to be violent. I think it can be. It very well might be, but I'm not promoting that because the next revolutionary tendency that is going to take place in Dominica to replace a government will see the death of not just one, but more than one. We are at an advanced stage now of development, weaponry, where we cannot afford that. I cannot promote the overthrow of any government right now, although the Patrick John government is overthrown. In fact, Patrick had been illegally replaced as prime minister. And the lawyers failed to deal with this. Mr. John was not legally replaced. It was an illegal transfer of power. Because can you imagine the opposition in Dominica now calling parliament? The opposition cannot convene parliament. Who convened parliament when Patrick was replaced? It wasn't Patrick. People say it was mayhem and chaos and they use whatever to. Really? So now we in the opposition must create chaos and mayhem now and call parliament and take out our government of Dominica? No. We can do better. We can do it the route of the ballot. And if that regime continues to push back at the people's will, the people will decide. But I am not going to promote violence in Dominica because I believe it's going to be very terrible. And I also believe if we put our best ideas and strengths together, even the supporters of this present government will say, yeah, it's true, and them and really have a good message, and yeah, it's maybe time. And they're saying it's time, you know. It is just that the rancor, the agitation, the vile nature of the opposition against them, the call for the things, the name calling is just not enticing to them to eat their vomit and say, it's true, boy, let me take them man out there, boy. And I've been advocating for that, to grow, to build a gentler sort of approach to reach the people who are unreachable at this point. I'm making the point that we can change our government. It doesn't have to be blood. We do not have to have youths in the streets fighting, and we should not really risk any blood being shed to change our government. Again, I say so, but if the government insists on doing what it has done and continue to go against the will of the people as they have done, I think at the end of the day, when the people act, we will have no control over them. But as a messenger, as an educator, as a teacher, I cannot promote any political violence in our country, but I'm aware that it can happen. And I'm afraid that it just might. But again, I'm asking for cool heads to prevail. Because the question I ask, and I'll come back to it, have we moved on? No. Because tonight there I see a politician on a program defending the status quo, his party. And I'm wondering, but doesn't this man want to win an election? And that's how you're going to win it? By holding on to something that obviously has caused some problem for us. There is a new freedom vibe. And Bosso has remained true to the true freedom. So we have to find a way to see and to get the freedom voice again. Because the last I heard the Prime Minister say he's the leader of the Freedom Party. And he smiled. And he knows why he's saying that. Because it's the freedom support that has him in power. And he is a freedomite. So, Mr. Leader of the Freedom Party, Bosso and others, there is a way to claim your support. But you have to do it the scientific way. You guys have not been going about it the right way. And I'm sure the person I heard today defending the old freedom status quo is the present Freedom Party leader. Again, no criticism. I'm just presenting a fair analysis of how things are, where we are today. And if we have moved, the answer is no. How we are going to move from here. Now, I'm not going to give the answer of how we're going to move. You probably can suggest it. Because I am involved in the business. I have great interest in the politics of Dominica and the region and the world, because that is my profession. That's what I do for a living, politics. So there are those who tell me, but Alex, you should leave that. How could I leave my profession? Leave it for the lawyers? Leave it for the teachers? That's what I do. I'm not always going to get everything done right, but when I make a mistake, I own it and I move on. That's how it is. I am a political practitioner. So I'm going to maintain a presence, and I will not say how we're going to move forward, because I have interest in the political business of our country, which is the service of our people based on the things that's best for them, their advancement, their wealth, their progress, their growth. So I'm not putting anybody on blast, because I believe that the best way forward is to work with freedom, work with workers, work with labor, work with PAPI, work with whatever, work with interests to find a winning formula. So I will never criticize a political party. I will, as an educator, be frank and truthful with the information. And if I do that and you feel offended, fine. But I'm not going to skirt around an issue or pants around an issue just because you are politically thin-skinned. No. The Freedom Party of Dominica did a lot to cause some problems for the political status quo. And they, in great parts, are the responsible entity when it comes to how things have evolved. Of course, things have evolved beyond what was envisaged by the great dame, may she rest well. But you cannot absolve the Freedom Party from doing what they did. And a new freedom should not seek to defend that. Say, well, freedom have learned and grown, and here's where we are today. Here is why we need, things like that. So Bernard and Bosso, whenever the time is right, get someone who can properly advise you as to how to get back your support, because Freedom Party is very potent and strong in the politics of Dominica. You just have to find the potency. And no matter how much you think you're a strategist or you have the expertise, you just may not have it, because not everyone has everything. You may have what is yours, other people may have what is theirs. I probably have hinted to the way forward. I think I've said too much. So I'm going to pause. I am going to start wrapping up because I've made the point, and I will, of course, check to see whether there are any questions for me. But generally, ladies and gentlemen, I have asked the question. I have proposed a little argument. I have suggested a sort of idea as to where we are. And the long and short of it is we have not moved an inch past 1979 when it comes to the politics, because we are still playing status quo politics. The side that replaced the other side still want to replace the other side. And if we go back to the 1970s, Labour was replaced by Freedom because Freedom told Labour supporters that Labour was corrupt and bad for them. They bought it and they took out Labour and put Freedom. Another party emerged after 15 years of Freedom and say, these guys have lost the vision that they came with. We are the guys who shall give it to you. We have the ideals of Labour with us. Come with us. And workers won. Freedom came and said, you took me out? I'm going to go back to Labour again to take you out. And they took out workers. Now workers want to take out that thing that has emerged. Guys, it is the same tit for tat politics. I'm not advocating against workers. Workers continue to be one of the most well-organized parties on island. But for us to beat what is there, we have to understand where we are and what brought us here. Workers in and of itself will not be able to take that out. That is bigger than workers' capacity. That's why I think Thompson is onto something, trying to build a coalition of support around his team, because that's the only way. Think about it now. How did they come into office? By doing what you should do. And you don't want to do it. Every time you have somebody new trying to help you, you're criticizing them and bringing them down. So to move what is there now, you need a great force with all sorts of talent and skills, not just one set of people. Less people carry on your tech. That's what Eugenia told me. I don't know whether that's her words, but she told me that when I was interviewing her. It's in my book. This book. Get a copy of that book, guys. That is my mission, to document the real history of our leaders. That's in her words, what she told me directly. And Patrick's book will be in his words. And I think we have Libla after. And then we have Mr. James. We're going to have all our leaders. I have no issues with workers, with Mr. James, with Lennox, with nobody. I am a fearless educator who tried to bring the information out to our people in a way that has not been brought, that it has not been brought out to them. Because today, again, I'm listening to Loftus, my brother, Attical brethren, have Evans and Magel on, and he had a politician on, and the politician still holding on. So, guys, we have not moved. We are still fighting for political turf. And Ito, I'm not criticizing you, I'm just presenting stuff. And we have to know that we, as separate entities, will never beat that thing that has been entrenched for a quarter century now, and going back maybe another quarter century, because the 15 years of freedom is the same thing we have now. It is just a grand version. And Ito, you should not be afraid to walk away from the old vintage. Start the new brand, because Mamo did not want that to happen. And you can defend Mamo's honor by saying that's not what Mamo did. But do not hold on to it as nothing has happened. There's nothing to see here. There's a lot to see here. And for us to go past this thing, we have to do a lot of work. Or for some people, bloodshed. Nah, we shouldn't want to do that. I don't want anybody to get hurt. Or wonderful, handsome, beautiful prime minister, I don't want him to get hurt. Or none of the ministers. I don't want anybody to lose their jobs unnecessarily. If you're doing a good job, keep them in their jobs. There should be no victimization. But Jah knows if a particular group gets in there, well, the government empty. And we have to move away from that notion. We have to sell the people who are holding up the system. Look, if I come in there, is to fix the system, not to take you out. But do you think the Labour Party people who are in office now, who are in jobs now, believe that they're going to be safe in their jobs if the opponents come in? No. That's why there need to be a new approach. People must feel confident that if I give another group authority, that I am safe. The narrative does not support that. Anyway, I think I've said enough before I start giving strategies publicly here. I think I've made the point I needed to make. We have not yet moved from the issues of the 70s politics, because I'm still hearing now, oh, my group should be doing that. Or if I'm doing an event, it should be only my party people doing it. Oh, my word. Every time I hear one of those voice notes, I quiver. Because some people really do not know what they do not know until they get to know what they do know. And then they will know what they didn't know. But some people take time. A lifetime, maybe 2 lifetimes. And we will see how that goes. All right, so that's my presentation. I've made the case. Let me thank Lofty again for the coordination. And thank you for viewing and for being part of our presentation. I will take some live comments if there are any. If not, I'll just do my final rebuttal and get off. All right, there's a comment. Lynn says Patrick was betrayed. Patrick told me he was betrayed. And Patrick called the names of the people who betrayed him. And I'm hearing them speaking all the time. Patrick's voice was never played. His story was never heard, but his story will be heard in my book. I'm not saying that I'm going to wash him clean. I'm going to say what he told me, and I'm going to compare it against what was said about him. Yes, but Patrick believes he was betrayed, and he explained many instances of how the betrayal happened, not just by one person, by several people who were around him. His people were young and ambitious. They wanted things fast, and they felt it best to take him out and to undermine him. In fact, there was a class structure in the Labour Party, you know, and it was the upper class in the Labour Party that mashed up the Labour Party, you know. And they became freedom and be part of the Freedom Party control stuff. But I'm speaking about that in my book, so you guys can read that there. But there was a class situation in the Labour Party that has undermined the Labour Party. It undermined Leblanc for sure. It killed Patrick. Not kill, it took him out of office and kind of a blanket him out of the history of Dominica. Very few people have heard about Patrick. I know Simeon has, Desiree has, I certainly have, because I've interviewed him for many years. And I'm going to share Patrick's story next in terms of my series of books that's coming up. It's called Patrick John the Man, his perspective of his story, history. That's the second book in the series of my leadership legacy series. All right, so that was a comment from Lynn. Lynn says, again, it bothers me that Eugenia was around Reagan and she only copied his political tendencies, not even infrastructure she brought to Dominica. Look at buildings she built, no style, no class. That's a fair comment. Because though Reagan was a conservative, he used the conservative tendencies to win, but he governed with a vision and a foresight. Because remember, he came from popular entertainment, from media, Hollywood, and he had his ideal and his vision for Dominica. I'm not too sure what Eugenia's vision was. I'm saying so in my book in terms of her lasting legacy. Guys, please get a copy of that book on Amazon. Read it. You will like it. I speak about her legacy, what I think her legacy is. And if you see how that book ends, it will make a lot of sense. It will really add to the discussion we're having right now. So yes, so she was an avowed conservative and used the tendencies that they used to win. But I'm not too sure that her vision for the Dominica that we would want was in sync with what the people wanted. So yes, we have the boulevard that exists still. Is that a legacy? Well, if you want to allude and apply an infrastructural development as a legacy achievement for our leader, fine. It's okay. But what is that thing that has changed the lives of so many people and most likely will change their lives? Like maybe the creation of an economic thrust, a bank, let's say social security, or something that is going to remain evergreen, something that will change but not so dramatically. Because any government can come and change that boulevard now and break the walls and put a new wall. But social security, the banks, and those fantastic creations that mark the legacy of certain leaders are not equal to, let's say, a building, a health center, a school. You see what I'm saying, guys? So there's legacy and legacy. And I'm again not criticizing, I'm just making the points that Lynn made, that probably Miss Charles did not buy into this grander China type futuristic ideals of a country. She was more into other things. Again, not a criticism, just an analysis. All right. Clement Anthony Luge, OJ suggested that Leo Austin, as part of PJ's led administration, was not straight. Well, you say not necessarily straight. The AG was, I'm not sure if he was straight or crooked, but he certainly was not, he didn't offer the best advice to the government and the prime minister, to their great detriment. And one may say, well, you can't blame him, you have to blame the Supremo, which is true. So the responsibility falls in the lap of the prime minister, but the quality of advice that you get as prime minister determines your success. And Patrick didn't have very good legal advice. Seraphine is right. And I think that in great parts drove Seraphine out of the party too. Based on what Patrick told me. Patrick told me other things about Seraphine as well that I will have in the book as well. And I'm not sure Seraphine is going to be very happy with everything Patrick said, but I cannot not put what Patrick said. But Leo Austin was not a very good actor. He caused a lot of problems for the government and for the people of Dominica. All right. Any more comments? Ebony, my dear friend and sister, how can we get the people to vote for country and not a political party? Oh, Ebony, my wonderful empress, my sister and friend. We can get them to do that if we have a national campaign, a national program, not a partisan one, as is the case now. Oh, my party is the best party, and our party is going. No. No longer. That is not the case in Dominica right now. We need to present an alternative plan, including all parties, in a way that is united and strong, and the people buy into it. But anytime you see it is going to be a partisan agenda against that thing in office will win. Because that's not one party in office in Dominica. That's not even Labour Party. That's an amalgamation of great forces after a prolonged period of time. That's a super incumbency. To beat this, you have to have a super real unity message that brings the best of the best together. So when somebody can watch me, Kamoli, who gave my support and patronage to the UWP for the better part of my life, more than half of my life. What half now? Almost all my life was spent in support of this party. And for a supporter of this party today to watch me and say that I'm a problem for that party because they now support the party still and I have moved my support away from the party, instead of trying to have me back, you try to kill me and call me an enemy of the party that I gave all my life to, that I was fired 3 times for, until and unless parties, especially that party, learn to understand, man, that it's friends that's going to make you win and not enemies. We will not be able to inform the people and convince them that they should vote for a different kind of thing. And the message also must be different. So it must be a total different kind of thing. Yes, Kamoli, if you have a party, you can support your party, but tell your party to get with the national program. Because and I shouldn't say no party. The parties right now don't have a national agenda. They have personal fixes. And if that party that has been in opposition for 20-something years gets into office today, what do you think they're going to do, Kamoli? Do you think they're going to keep all the Labour Party people in office? Really? They're gonna, well, I'm not sure if they'll do that, but just think about it now, Kamoli, and answer the question. And people are scared because people are gonna say, boy, I think I might be out for so long. So people are looking for this grander plan that tells them everything is going to be okay. This is a national thing. It's not about saving my party. And that's what Dominicans are looking for, to place a new group of people in office. Thank you, Kamoli, for the question. We 1 hour in. We're doing well. I'm not going to do like Lofty and go for 2 hours, but I'll answer as many questions as I can answer. Let me see if there's any other question from anybody else. Kamoli says, I for country, not political party. And Kamoli, if I know you well, I know you're for country. You're a person of high repute. I've known you since, So, and I can vouch for that. And that's what we should be. People should not be trying to kill Alex. No. Who is trying to push a national agenda instead of the party agenda? Now, if the party was pushing the national agenda when I was with the party, I don't mind. But the party did not want to go there. And does the party want to go there now? Fine. Let's go there. And I'll be there with you. But I'm not going to be part of a segregated partisan thing, because Dominicans are calling for something different. And that's where I am, Kamoli, and that's where you are, and that's where many people are, including those who have aided and abetting that power sharing arrangement, are willing to dance, but they will not dance to the tune that the party is playing right now. It has to be different. I hope you get the message, Kamoli. Let's see if there are any more comments that I should answer. Lynn said, impossible because our political arena was smeared from the start and people just following what their family followed is like a clan. Well, if you want to write off Dominicans, say never, fine. I will never write my people off. Dominicans are as astute as it gets, and if Dominica see a different kind of message by people who are willing to say that's what I want to do for the general good of the people will rally with that. I believe in the Dominican people. I vouch for the wisdom of our people. You cannot write off Dominica and say that nothing good can happen in the politics of Dominica anymore. It is impossible to say that. Dominicans just need to be fed with the food that they need, and they will shelve away that government, and the people themselves will shelve away. Those inside will say, we come in. It's easier than you think. So I'm not going to say Dominica finish. I'm not going to turn my back on Dominica. Those of you who have done that, well, I'm sorry. But Dominica is worth it to continue to fight for, to continue to secure as a democracy, as a bastion of togetherness in the Caribbean. It cannot be that Dominica cannot be fixed. So I understand you, Lynn, but you cannot give up under on such condition. I cannot. It's not as yet. All right. Any more comments? Lynn says, oh boy, Lynn, you batting boy, Lynn Latham. They might shut down the country every week. The stigmatization is real. It's no longer about country, it's about pocket. Every party wants power, not any more love for country. I agree with you. Lynn. That's why it cannot be a party thing. That's why I got out of the party thing to create a movement to try to call for the unity. And those who didn't want unity, kill it. And now other parties are emerging looking party again. Guys, Lynn is right. We cannot continue to look for party. Build your country and your party will be okay. You are now fighting to build your party at the detriment of the country. Lynn, you are right. You are right about the selfishness. But you are wrong that Dominicans will not move. I believe we will move when we get off our high partisan horse. Those people who are secretly plotting to have their party advance and to kill everybody else, you will not have your way. Your party will not win in and of itself. You need to work with all interests involved in the political space of Dominica. Lynn, you are right. I take a couple more messages if we have more. Petra Carbon George. I believe that political parties should have people's needs as number one priority. Hey, last Petra. My family, my blood, I could kiss you. That is where I am. And I know that's where you are because I've spoken to you on many occasions. No say for me. And you are married to my countryman. That even makes us more family. And I know that there are people who are discussing the politics of Dominica now who are thinking like you, Petra. And that is the only way out. And the people will see it, they will gravitate towards it. Not away from it, because you can gravitate away. Whoosh, you can deviate. So, yes. And I know a party that has at its agenda enshrined in its constitution the ideals that you just espoused, Petra. And Dominicans will get to know more of it in time. Because bon Dieu, we can do better. We have to do better. Antigua changing government, St. Vincent changing. Well, not much St. Vincent. St. Lucia. Grenada changed after a long time. Because we have to change. We will change the government, and there's going to be no gunshot, no bloodshed. It doesn't have to be. Was there any bloodshed to change Keith Michel in Grenada? No. We can't change our government if no bloodshed, man. All right. Let me see if we have any more messages there. Before I wrap up. All right. I'm not too sure that I'm seeing any more. And if we have no more, I'm ready to call it a day. All right. So, any more messages? Hold on. I'm looking to see if I have any more. Okay, good. So it looks like we have cleared our comments and messages. Let me now wrap up. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for being here. We had a really spirited discussion. I hope that you were able to make some sense of what I presented. I had a discussion about the May 1979 issue, not from the partisan perspective, but as a general discourse based on my own research and my understanding of the issues, not defending or promoting any party. My brother Lofty had one earlier where he sensitized us with the thing that happened, and I was very happy to hear from the military people about the operations. I learned some new stuff. I think Wadix had a program earlier too with OJ, and Lofty also had a politician who again was dancing around the status quo, which is what politicians do. And we were able to add a little diversity to the discussion, and I am thanking you for tuning in, for adding to the content, and I would hope that you could share the experience with others so that we can continue having a discussion moving forward, because the more we speak, the more we work together, the better it's going to be for us moving forward. Thank you again for being part of this Politics and Power feature, a special feature that dealt with the issues of May 29, 1979. The thesis was, did we move? If we have not, how do we move? I didn't say exactly how we're going to move, but generally you understand that to move, we have to move united. And it's not going to take one party. It's going to take all parties with interest in the politics to cause us to make progress away from the political incumbency of the present. Thank you for being here with me, and I'll see you guys on my regular program next week, Monday. Au revoir.